And we'll get started as soon as, yeah, I was letting everybody know. We'll get started once it gets fixed. Thank you. Okay, good morning. For real this time. So, welcome to June the 11th, 2025 Homeless Planning Council meeting. And we do have public comment on the agenda this morning as well. It's a packed agenda, so I'm going to go right in. You have already been welcome. So I'm going to do the attendance, which starts with myself, Kenitha Patterson. I'm here in, if I name a conflict, I'd say probably Park Center. I'm on the board there. But next, Pastor Stephen Handy.
Present conflict.
Okay.
Sorry, present conflict.
And Deirdre Nicole. Liz Mallard.
Present, no conflict.
Okay. Jamie Villegas.
Present, no conflict.
Dr. Exidria Ensley. India Panjagar.
Present, no conflict.
Drew Freeman.
Present, no conflict.
Diana Allen Robb. Michelle Southard.
Present, no conflict.
Andrea Hancock.
Present, no conflict.
Meredith McLeod Jolin. David Langle Martin.
Present, conflict.
Okay. Councilman Jordan Huffman.
Present, no conflict.
Okay, and Councilwoman Courtney Johnston, we already heard, is not gonna be here. Councilman John Rutherford.
Present, no conflict.
Okay. Rico X, we know he's en route. Oh, sorry. I didn't see you come in. Apologies, I've been looking down. So he's definitely here. I know Ashley Horton's situation. Then Lizzie Goddard.
Present, no conflict.
Okay, and there's Miss Diana. Angie Lawless.
Present, no conflict.
And Jaha Martin.
Present, no conflict.
Okay, and let me correct Miss Diana's. Alrighty. Thank you all for that. And then going into the names of people that we have lost in the state of homelessness here in Nashville, Tennessee. So if we could just take a moment of silence while we remember these names. Thomas Bolton, John Manasco, Joe Johnson, Kelton King, Inez Turley, Randy Honey, and Dre Beeman. If we could just take a moment to recognize these lives lost. And thank you all for that. And if we could just briefly review our May 2025 minutes. I'm pretty sure folks got a chance to look beforehand. And I think too, if our public comment could be making their way up as well. And if anyone does not have any corrections, we'll move forward to the public comment portion. And the action item is COC bills application. And we have Ms. Shanley Degnan that's gonna be speaking public comment.
Good morning. My name is Shanley. I'm rushing because I got my 2 minutes. I'm the chair of the HMIS Oversight and Data Committee. I was on the HMIS team for several years previously, and right now I consult continuums of care throughout Middle Tennessee. I love data, and I think that telling stories with our data is one of the most meaningful responsibilities that we have in this community and in this space. I also think it's really, really important to use language that we've agreed upon when we're doing so. And I have some concerns about some of the language that's being used when we're reporting on the outcomes from Old Tent City's encampment closure. So really, I just wanted to bring that to your attention, and hopefully we can fix it and move forward. You guys are gonna see in your report from OHS that they're saying that 107 people were housed from Old Tent City, and I think it's 81 of them are staying currently at the Roadway Inn Motel. I'm uncomfortable using the phrase housing in this way, and in particular, or even interim housing, I think is too far of a stretch from what the situation is. I think that this is important to talk about because when we use language that's not reflective, it really muddies the conversation, and I think it prevents groups like you all from being able to ask the right questions about what happens and what's happening now and what happens next. My evidence, I think that the Roadway Inn is not interim housing. That phrase I'm not familiar with in terms of like the federal landscape of definitions that we have. I personally think we should be calling it an emergency shelter. I've asked a few people, I'd be happy to be wrong on this, but I've not heard of any residents there that have leases that would protect their rights as tenants. They don't have kitchens to cook in. They are subject to a host of rules and regulations. Okay, can I have 30 more seconds, Kanitha? Thank you. They're subject to a host of rules and regulations like bag checks and curfews. And then most importantly and pointedly, last I've asked, this is a project type in HMIS set up as an emergency shelter. So when we report to the federal government, this will be as an emergency shelter. So one, I'm asking that we update our language, and two, I'm asking for you all as the Homelessness Planning Council to find room to ask important questions like, what is going to happen to the people being paid for at this emergency shelter? Thank you.
Thank you, Shanley. Okay. Thank you for that. Do we have any type of discussion to follow the public comment?
Yes, I would actually really like to hear, a response to that, to those questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Specifically, what it's like inside. Do they have access to kitchens, as well as how long are folks to be there? And also, I was a little bit curious as to, we've talked about some of the issues there, but is it a prudent course of action to be filling a place like that with solely, closing down like Old Tent City and putting all, that population, all chronic homeless potentially in there, or is it possibly better to have mixed it up to make it a little better environment possibly?
I can answer some of those questions. I think there's a lot of them to kind of field here, but I would say our work with Dr. Sam Simbaris, there's a report that's coming out. We worked with Sam Simbaris and Dr. Richard Cho, and they explained to us just last week that the study is going to show living outdoors ends people's life exponentially, 20 years younger than housed individuals. And the study is going to show that emergency shelter expands that just a little bit, and interim housing expands that a little bit, and there's going to be a step up, and so we'll have access to that report. I'll make sure that we share that report with everyone here, and they not only said it to us once, but they said it to us multiple times, so we will make sure to share that. I think HUD-TA helped us with designing this interim housing model 3.5 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And this is the model that we have used with vendors utilizing that space. And so having on-site services provided there, because we understand this is a population that's experiencing chronic homelessness. Also being able, I think one thing that our community can agree on is being able, if we're going to address an encampment, being able to keep the community together and move them all at the same time, I think has been very successful. Sometimes one-offs, moving them out individually too early on starts some isolation, some other concerns that come along with that. So we've seen great success. Even as we were addressing this encampment, several of the individuals there would come back daily to say, hey, I've moved and it's great. Where you're going is great. So we also had individuals say, this is the first time I've ever felt like the housing option set me up for success. So, we listen to those voices. This location has microwaves and dorm-sized refrigerators, but the owners or the operators of the interim housing location, they also provide food. And so prior to the previous operators, they provided meals as well, breakfast, lunch, or breakfast, dinner, and a snack throughout the day. And so this organization is committed to doing that as well. So meals are provided. And the interim housing, it is a option of housing. It's something that HUD-TA helped us with 3 years ago. You'll see on a page here in your document where we talk about, 81 moving into interim housing, and all of the individuals there refer to themselves as being housed as well. So I want to make sure that as we're looking to modify language, we're not diminishing their hope along the way as well. Also, you'll see here where other places that other individuals went throughout that process. This camp was unique in that I was reminded the other day by someone in the community that HUD-TA was shocked and astonished 3 and 4 years ago to know that we had a camp that's been open 40 years. They were shocked and astonished to know that the individuals had been there 8 years or more, and asked us to move forward with an encampment strategy. And so I think that there's been a lot that's happened in the last 3 years, from not having a community strategy, drafting a community strategy, having our HUD-TA change. We've had 3 rounds of HUD-TA that's simply said the same thing as far as interim housing is a model that will work. I think early on we used some ESG funds. There was no security allowed or provided at this site. As we moved into the ARPA funds, we were able to provide security on site, and it has really helped the individuals. And kind of no different than like Strobel Center doing a PSH model. So moving people into a PSH model, there's security on site, there is case management and interim services there. This is not a PSH site, so I know there was a question where someone asked if they would lose their chronic homeless status, and they're not losing their chronically homeless status because they don't sign a lease and it's not permanent housing. So the main goal is permanent housing. We have 2 interim housing options that Metro currently funds. One is hotel conversion and the other is church conversion options. And so we try to divide them up a little bit as we move people, some to go to the church conversion, some to go to the hotel model. And when you're looking to, I know when you're looking to house people quickly, they may not have birth certificates, photo IDs, they've lived outside. Our goal as local government is, as we address the needs of our Nashville unhoused neighbors, is to leave them a lot better off than we found them. And so leaving people in a camp for 8 years just does not seem acceptable. So as we move them into housing, all of the resources that are needed to set them up for success is provided. So looking at previous interim housing options, 88% did not return to homelessness, 88%. And so I think that there was some math where, I don't have the breakdown of those numbers, but I think 66 to 67% moved into permanent housing from that 88%. Others may be in, incarcerated or some other things that kind of happened along the way. So for me, it's a successful model. I think talking with our HUD TA and talking with the national leaders that was here last week, they view it as a successful model as well, and definitely a step up from residing where they were residing. I'm not sure if I answered all your questions, but I tried to give comprehensive.
Yes, no, I think that did answer a lot. I guess I'm interested in I know you talked a little bit about, what on-site services are there, because I'm guessing these people probably need a lot of, mental health, and just, it's a big transition. So I'm wondering about, if there's any, mental health provider on site. I know that we've heard a lot about security, but I also think that's a balance of being a bit traumatizing. So I'm curious about the services, and also, I know that interim makes sense to me in just a general way, but I also wonder, are we looking at this as emergency housing, and what is kind of the time frame that we're hoping to keep these people there, and then where do they go?
Yeah, so the security there was brought on because even the individuals there requested they needed security there. I think the security team that's there has worked with this population, our unhoused population, for over 20 years. They're fully capable of addressing the needs of the individuals. And it's also helped to offset the services that services that MNPD would be required to provide there. So MNPD greatly appreciates that as well as the property owner and the community there. So as far as services, the provider, Hospitality Hub is the provider, and they're providing on-site case management, housing triage, other resources, and they're partnering with people like Neighborhood Health provides services there. A lot of the individuals were already receiving some mental health counseling and services from other providers here in Nashville, and those services can continue. They didn't move there to discontinue all of the services that were provided. Even the church conversion options that we have, it's the same model where intensive services are provided, but the housing navigation and the services that are needed to help them be able to maintain or obtain a lease is vitally important as well. So the other question I think was on-site services. No, it was something else you said. Oh, time frame. So the time frame is, we would like to say the average is 90 to 120 days. For the church conversions, it's a lot shorter than it is for the hotel options. Previous owners actually had individuals sign a lease, previous operators actually had individuals sign a lease. I think that was really confusing for the population. They said, hey, I have a lease, I can stay here for a year. And that's not the goal of this situation. So our main goal is to move people out as quickly as possible as housing options become available. So even that number, I don't have the number of individuals that moved out of that location. I just would say the total is that moved into permanent housing was a 67%, but I can get that to you as well. I think as far as the main goal being moving into permanent housing, someone asked me why would we not say what that time frame is. After 90 days or 120 days, we're not exiting anyone. But I want to be clear, the main goal is permanent housing from there, which would be the shared housing, even family reunification. We've had some of that to take place. But if we put a time frame on it publicly, it sometimes allows individuals to not think of this as a short stay. They think of this as, I can stay here for a year until the next option is made available. Right now, I know someone's going to ask, we don't have vouchers in place, but we have other affordable housing options that are available. We're doing really great with SOAR opportunities and helping people increase their income. Shared housing is a model that is severely underutilized in our community. And in our budget request this year, we're requesting some ongoing non-traditional rapid rehousing like rental subsidies and operating costs for permanent supportive housing options as well.
We had two more comments over here.
Thank you, Ms. Calvin. I had a question. So you said that these residents who are coming into roadway are not being given a lease per se, like a formalized lease, like the first round of encampment surges, housing surges. What steps are being taken to make sure that every resident there is given due process during, if any issues arise, whether or not they would be given notice about if they were asked to leave, and things like that. And I want to say a little bit about security. If anybody's ever approached the 95 Wallace roadway in, the first thing you see is a little guard booth and a gate. And it's very, in my opinion, it's not very welcoming. I've seen security in actions, and I've heard reports, that the security, while it definitely was wanted, the acts of the security guards and the security agency have been, let's just say, a mixed review. I do want to make sure that these people, while their short stays are short, that they're also safe and they're given their rights are protected. Is there any, do you know what kind of protections that they're being given when it comes to their housing option?
So the previous operators utilized a lease model, and this is a grant that we have with the organization. So Hospitality Hub has a different model. It's short-term, short stay, interim housing, meaning that this is the best option that was available until permanent solutions can be made available. So we have asked for a copy of their policy and procedures. We've asked for a copy of their grievance procedures, and our team is on a call with them twice a week. Once a week. We typically do twice a week, but we've had a lot going on here. So, but we will be on a call with them twice a week, just like we are with the other interim housing options where we discuss these things. And so we have not heard from people that live in roadway that they have not felt safe with security there. And as a matter of fact, typically they're the ones that reach out to security more so than, any other operators in that space or people living in that space. So I will make sure on our calls, we would previously with the previous owners, we would have, or operators, we would have quarterly calls or quarterly meetings with security, MNPD, the hotel owner and the operator, and we will make sure to continue that. We've just had a lot going on, so we haven't started that process yet.
India.
I just want to I will not push it twice. Sorry about that. I just wanted to explicitly address Shanley's public comment that we started with. I agree that it's concerning that we define roadway one way to HUD or with some terminology to HUD and then a different terminology to the public. So I was wondering if you could answer that explicitly. Why do we refer to roadway as emergency shelter when we're communicating that to other service providers within HMIS and the federal government, but then another terminology to the general public?
We utilize interim housing from the start, and even with HUD-TA guiding us on that, when we designed this model, the HMIS database doesn't have an interim housing drop-down function, so the best was to use the the emergency housing because of the drop-down function. Not that's designed inside of HMIS, not so much the functions of the operating of the system.
Could I
Do you mind, India?
No, it's fine.
No, I think there's a conversation to be had here of, there's not a drop-down option because it's not a HUD-defined housing destination. We have emergency shelter, we have permanent housing, which involves a 12-month lease at minimum. Temporary housing could be a shorter leasing term, it still requires a lease. Roadway is an emergency shelter in HMIS right now, and I think that's how it should be classified. And I think I would just really strongly request on behalf of myself and being in this work of revising the reports we're putting out and saying this was a shelter surge. And I agree with you absolutely that it can save people's lives. I think we should offer it, and it is a vital resource, but it is not housing. And I think being able to say we were able to connect people to shelter, 81 of them, but looking at this, it only looks like maybe 15 at best were actually permanently housed with a 12-month lease. And I think that's really important for us to pull apart, not to blame shift, but so that we know what our resource asks are, that we're in alignment as a community when we're going to funders, if that's HUD or someone locally, to say, hey, we actually need, 100 plus housing resources for this encampment, not we've already housed 107. So I think that's my concern with how we're framing it. So my request to the data committee, whoever's doing these reports of, can we organize it by, is this permanent housing? Is it temporary housing? Is it emergency shelter? In alignment with how we have to report it to the federal government. I think it's just gonna really help us get out of the weeds and more towards some solutions.
I do want to say, I think that I will get with HUD TA, our HUD TA that helped us to coin that term of interim housing, but also I think the difference was it's not emergency. They were leaning more towards transitional housing versus emergency housing. And so I will get with more information from them on why the decision was chosen for interim housing versus emergency or transitional housing, which are two terms that are HUD utilized.
Thank you. I would love to hear follow up on that. And then my other request would be if we could see some longitudinal reporting on roadways specifically of outcomes at 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and not to say we're cutting people off, but I think it's difficult to understand how long folks are staying there, where they're actually going afterwards. We have some tables in the report, but the data is pretty hard to follow, so I would love to ask for some additional kind of midterm, long-term reporting of outcomes at roadways specifically.
Yeah, and I think to not point out a organization that was able to step into that space, I would much rather do it across the board for multiple so that we're comparing instead of pointing out one funded agency when it's, I think that that's important for COC funded agencies, for Metro funded agencies as well.
Are there other comparable interim sites that we would be looking at across the board? Is that community care, the navigation centers? Because I would love that. I would love to see if we're calling it interim housing or these more site-based emergency shelters, what is the length of stay? And are we checking in with folks in those, increments? Because I think it's going to really help us better understand what's actually happening and how we can help.
Okay, I want to say I got two more, comments that are coming from members. However, we're going to have to parking lot the conversation. This is a very important conversation. That's why I've allowed it to go the way it has, and we're getting answers. So that's, I think, very beautiful on the community work. And that's what's needed in this hour. So if we could just get the last two I saw, Councilman Huffman and Mr. Freeman as well.
Thank you, Chair, and my comments will be brief. You get no argument from me regarding the classification. That needs to be clear, especially so that we can understand resources. But what I want everybody listening and everybody on this committee to be very careful of is demonizing a housing option. At the end of the day, we're pulling people off the streets. It's not permanent. It's not meant to be permanent. Permanent solutions are things that this city has fallen woefully behind on. And that's something that the Metro Council is looking at right now very, very seriously. So I just want to highlight that. And, you know, there's one anecdotal story that I'll share from a resident of the former homeless encampment in Hermitage in my district. This lady I knew because I had gone into the camp and communicated with the members of that camp because, once again, as you've heard me say before, they're my constituents as well. This lady I knew well for 6 months. I always thought she had black hair. She got taken into roadway. She got the comfort of sleeping behind a door, and I went over to visit her and to visit the people that were at this camp that had been housed. I didn't recognize her. She had salt and pepper hair. She had so much dirt caked in her hair that I had no idea what she truly looked like. So I just cannot preface enough that we have to be careful with demonizing options that we have. The roadway provides real solutions for people. They don't kick people out. There's still one person that resided at the homeless camp at Hermitage that was closed on January 31st, 2024, that still resides there. So just want to say that for the record. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Freeman.
Yeah, and I'll start off by echoing the sentiments of Councilman Huffman, but I do have a couple of questions. Do they have case managers working with each of them, or that's happened to work with those collected services? So they're being visited weekly, monthly by the case managers to make sure they're progressing? And I'll let you answer that one. But the last question is, you know, sometimes it helps with clarity if we can share and define our measurements of success. Is there a documented or is there a shared, what does success look like for us in this encampment? Is it that we house them in 90 days? Is it like, what are the measurements of success so we can know how we're tracking?
Yeah, great question. So definitely the case management is on site and they're visited daily. They visit them when they're passing out meals. There's, you know, a lot of ongoing case management. Our team is providing navigation to help with getting documents. These individuals lived outside 8 years and don't have a birth certificate, right? So there's a lot of work that's going in there. And service providers that were able to provide, you know, case management, I'd say Park Center or not Park Center, mental health co-op or places that were providing ongoing case management while living outdoors, they can continue to provide that ongoing support in therapy and counseling as well. So it's important to note that the services are there on site. They're just not placed behind a door and people walk away. I think defining success is important. In our encampment strategy, there's some main things there that we utilize. I think it's like maybe 3 main goals in the back of it that this is a new one, so I don't have them in mind at this point in time, of how we define what success looks like. But for me, I think if you look at the very front page of this thing that you all have, this document or this booklet that you have, like I think of several of things that are listed there as success. For one, the 45% decrease in deaths in 1 year, and I know it's because we were using models like this. I think also before the next meeting, I can send out the encampment strategy that will have the individual goals. And I think, you know, moving people moving into the interim housing, length of stay, and moving into permanent housing are all things that was discussed in that strategy.
Oh, I would just recommend that if we continue to give updates, that we highlight those and start with those, and we start how we're progressing with those, just to keep us all focused on what success looks like.
Thank you, everyone.
Sorry, is it okay, just 20 seconds? One thing you just mentioned is that there's a study about the outcomes and how you attributed the success in the decrease in rate of deaths to the housing. Words are actions, data matters. I'd be cautious to make anecdotal statements like that as data, because there could be a lot of other contributing factors to that, but just wanted to note.
You want to say it?
Director Calvin's Office of Homeless Services report, please.
I just didn't want to keep talking, so I you may want to say it. So a lot of the things we talked about were things that I was going to address. So I don't feel the need to go through all of that, but I do want to highlight a couple of other things as we're talking about our unsheltered population. One is I received a call from Fire and OEM because there is a camp that's right off of, don't want to give locations on a public mic, but there is a camp that is in the fallout zone of fireworks that's going to happen on the 4th of July. And so in Shelter Committee tomorrow, we'll be having a different conversation because if that's the fallout zone, it's been the fallout zone of fireworks for don't know how many years. That's hugely important to discuss. Also, a task force. There was a community member that asked for a task force. I think that will help with addressing some of these questions as well, as it relates to community capacity, services provided, funding that's needed, any other creative solutions, because we just can't continue at what we've been doing for the last 10 years and thinking that that's success, because it has not been successful. And so we're going to talk about that tomorrow during Shelter Committee as well. I think that's enough about the unhoused population as it relates to the encampments, but we're going to schedule a couple of debriefing dates. I think I would consider this as a debriefing, but we will schedule a couple of debriefing dates, one with Shelter Committee and one with the Health and Safety Committee as well. So there'll be more to come on that. I think also want to talk a little bit about the June 4th event. It was a wonderful event. If you were able to attend, a lot of things happened right before the kickoff of that event. So I think there were some people, or myself for one, that was a little off kilter, but it turned out to be an awesome event. There's some data that is in this booklet that we pulled from the year. I want to make sure to be a little bit more intentional about sharing this data because I feel like people are creating narratives that sometimes don't even align with the data, just like me saying 45% decrease on deaths. There's a lot that goes into that. I could put a whole lot of bullet points on why that decrease happened. But we are also working with someone that helps to make sure that what our focus would be is how do we share our data, review our data times for other communities our size, and review our data towards national averages. Because sometimes locally we get stuck in the weeds here. I don't have a number in front of me, but there was a number that I was talking with our team about, like, how do we help increase this? How do we, because numbers that, I don't have it in front of me, so I don't want to misspeak. But anyways, and then, talking to Richard Cho, he's like, the national average is 30, and you're at 45. You're doing great, but for me, it's much more about comparison data so that we'll understand as a community where we rank in the services that we're doing. So there's a booklet in front of you that talks about our systems performance measures. If you, we do a community application, and almost 40% of the points we get on our community application is based on systems performance measures of COC-funded agencies. And so we spend a lot of time talking, like interim housing is not a COC-funded agency, but I do want us to be held responsible for the work that's being done there. But I think that across the board as a community, when we are losing points for not addressing some other concerns, which are some things that I want to highlight in that task force that we design as well. So more to come on that. I think the speakers were excellent, and they're all willing and ready to come back to Nashville, whether it be independently, whether it be collectively again. So we're excited about that. We're going to do a debriefing with the speakers. I think several of the speakers you all know and love, and then some were fairly new to Nashville. But the very last page, it's some really great things that are recommended for us as a call to action as a community. And so I want to talk through those, but I know we went really long, so I'm not going to talk through those. We can read over them, talk about them in the different committees in which that work may live, and then we can bring that back next month.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you being able to condense that. You have a statement, question?
Yes, I just had a couple of quick questions. for Director Calvin. So looking at the Anthony's Drive Housing Update and Progress Report document, so on this document, it says that 107, it identifies 107 individuals, but previously you had said that the list that OHS made had 125 individuals on it, so that's 18 individuals that, in my mind, I assume that the outcomes are unknown, and so it's a little bit unclear to me why, we went from 125 to 107, and within this 107, we have one outcome listed as unknown. So wanted some clarity around those two numbers, the 107 and 125. And then also throughout the encampment closure process, there was reference that there was also a Salvation Army list of people that they had identified and maybe were trying to find resources for. So I was wondering if you could clarify what the difference between those two lists were and how many people were on that Salvation Army list as well.
Yeah, both lists were combined and double checked. So that's where the 125 came from.
Okay.
Both lists were combined. We did not operate on like your list and our list. Also, the 125, we spent 6 months in that camp gathering this information. As you all know, camps are very fluid. By the time we posted that information, all 125 were no longer in the camp. So by the time we went and started doing daily triage in the camp from 10 till 3 every day, Monday through Friday. So, sorry, not Saturdays and Sundays, Monday through Friday. All 125 were no longer there. So, and then some of them have names like, abbreviated names, not real names, or had not been connected or entered into HMIS. So we have that information. Our outreach efforts don't stop just because we close a camp, just as I'm sure yours did not stop as well, right? There's many more. I think one thing that I define as success, out of 125 people, we know where 107 went. And so to me, that is a 15%, 85 to 15%. It's still a win. 85%, we know exactly where they went. We may not be, and you've seen this in other camps, we may not be successful at housing every individual because every individual has their own self-choice and will. So we will continue to provide outreach and services to individuals. People that are on that list, if we encounter them in outreach, then we will continue to provide ongoing services to them. The work does not stop. And I think that that's important to note across Davidson County. This is just one camp we're talking about. I think even like in Hermitage, when we closed the camp in Hermitage, Lakeisha May had been focused on something else for a while that was happening, but her efforts still remain in that zip code.
I'm unclear then why we would not have had those 18 individuals listed as outcome unknown if they were identified as living in that camp, and then, we don't know what happened to them. So there's that. And then just really quick, what was the first date that someone from Old Tent City moved into Roadway on?
I don't have that information in front of me.
Well, because I was asking because the last coordination call that I was on, so that would have been May 30th, so right before the camp officially closed, there was a service provider on there that provides mental health resources that was saying, hey, we haven't gotten a single referral for anybody that's moved into Roadway yet. We'd love to start working with people. When can we expect to get those referrals? And so when we're thinking about spend downs, I think those are important conversations to have and things to bring, just to talk about. And so I was wondering, how can we as a community support your office in making sure some of those referrals can happen towards the beginning of an encampment closure, not after, some people have potentially been in Roadway for, 60 days waiting to receive some of those supports.
Yeah, I would like for those referrals to be made while they're still outside. So yeah. I greatly appreciate that. I was not on that call, so I'm not sure of who said that. I think a lot of times, the supportive services that's in the spend down that you're referencing is typically on the other side of housing, but referrals can be made anytime. So I don't know the first day. This is not an I gotcha moment, but I can get it to you.
I was just curious because I wasn't trying to insinuate that, maybe I don't remember the first day either, so I was just not trying to insinuate that for sure there were people that had been at Roadway for the whole 60 days by the time the closure happened. But I would just like to support and have a conversation about how we can make sure referrals are happening, as soon as people move from an encampment into Roadway and not after they've been there for X amount of days.
Yes, ma'am, Jaha.
agree. I do, I've heard a lot about the mental health, which I do think is important. I think a piece that I'm also hearing, which is a concern for me, and hopefully in coordination meetings, we can have those conversations. I've heard a lot of people talk about how they're out in encampments and they're able to bring a lot of critique around what OHS is doing. But I guess I'm concerned that if you're in encampments as an agency and a provider, what help is being done by these other agencies to get some of these referrals done? And why is the work, it seems to be mostly on OHS. So I guess as we look at this and we look at, one of the things we coined is like a one team, community approach, how do we then strengthen that? Because I'm with the councilman that I think terminology is very important, data is important, but from someone too who is also right now managing 49 people in transitional housing, and we were also out at those surges and helping people get in, is that when we continue to think about this trauma-informed and human-centered model that we are using, it is not as easy as 30 days. You can have the most intensive case management. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm providing the services, but one thing I realized yesterday meeting with an individual who has been housed for 5 months in a setting, I'm there like, hey, what are you doing? You're not motivated. We got to get you moving is what I'm thinking. And then I'm looking and I'm like, this person is probably plagued with grief. They haven't now, when I'm talking about transitioning, they're transitioning independently from a partner. And so now I got to back up and I got to say, hold up for myself. Because my goal is looking at what my performance measures are telling me, to be honest. But I am now like, wait a minute, now how do I shift? Because this is a person who may not even understand that themselves. And so what I just want us to be very aware of is that when we looked at what is really sheltered homelessness, whether you want to call it interim, whether you want to call it emergency shelter, is that the trauma that comes with this is not as simple as coming in here and giving an update that in 30 days someone met with a case manager. Sometimes when you are in survival mode, the thought about a mental health referral, you can do it, but as a mental health professional, that is absolutely not best practice because you are in crisis. So we are not getting great mental health intervention at that point. It sometimes will take them 5 months to get settled, just a little bit. And in that time, all I'm doing is checking in just to see how they look, how they are, and the measures that are not reported are just like the councilman said. Nobody cares that we go in and someone has better hair, their face is fuller. But I think as this committee, we cannot diminish that. And I do know this other work is very important, but I do want us to think when we're asking mental health from a mental health profession who is seasoned for over 25 years, the same way we don't want anecdotal comments around data, I would appreciate the same around the mental health, the goals, and that we are very cautious about what that looks like and what that expectation is from one particular provider.
Thank you for that, Jaha. Okay, Miss Angie?
Yeah, I guess my only thought is that what I been, relatively new, I think that one thing that I see is just a lot of mistrust between the community and all of the providers and OHS and the city. And so I think this conversation is very productive. I don't enjoy, putting all of the blame on OHS. I don't think it should be, we shouldn't be pitted together. We need very clear goals, and I agree with Drew. They should be stated, I think at the beginning of every meeting, and we need all providers working toward that same goal because we all have hearts and we wouldn't be here otherwise. But I think sometimes in these meetings things get, and maybe it's a lack of time, I don't think it's like an intentional, but it comes across very surface. And so I think digging down into some of the gritty stuff like Jaha's talking about and understanding these numbers and feeling like we can start developing trust again with the community and all the providers will be a really strong start. I don't have all the answers, but I think that if we can start with that trust and pure transparency, the good and the bad, we will move mountains.
Amen. that. I want Miss Allison to be making her way up, Miss Cantway, a collaborative applicant, but exactly what Angie said, everyone's statements are valid, no matter which side they're on. We're here as a community to get people inside and end homelessness at the end of the day for Nashville, Davidson County. So working together benefits everybody, and the less competition we have is the more it's going to look better on Nashville, Tennessee itself on solving homelessness if we could all get together. And I did want to say to Director Calvin's, the task force, I feel like initiatives efficiency is that task force that's already being made for everything to go through, because that's what their purpose is. So I feel like that's already in progress. We'll hear about that, I think, with the updates from Ms. Raquel. But thank you, Ms. Allison. It's your mic now.
All right. Morning, everybody. Okay, so here's our collaborative applicant update.
Hello.
So a few weeks ago, we sent out a COC calendar with dates for the rest of the year, the dates that we know, and then sort of a tentative calendar in case a NOFO drops. So that includes like some meetings and trainings, particularly because we've heard from folks in the community that it's really hard with that first COC application. And so we wanted to make sure that like new agencies felt that they had the support that they needed to bring that forward. So we are going to offer some of those trainings in the next few months, if and when a new NOFO drops. We are going to begin the monitoring process imminently. We are going to be closely following the HUD monitoring exhibits. So these are the documents that, you know, if HUD comes to monitor your agency, this is what they bring. They're all available on HUD.gov, so they're very publicly accessible. We are prepared in case a NOFO drops. We haven't heard anything yet, but in the typical one-year cycle, this is about the time of year that we would be expecting a NOFO to come. Now, last year we moved to a 2-year cycle, but we're prepared in case that is not what happens. You know, I know every month I typically give an update on sort of where HUD is generally, and particularly the HUD budget. So Congress is currently in the budget process. This will have really significant implications for HUD. But at the moment, they are still working through it, so I don't really have anything definitive to share because it's going to change every day with every committee meeting. Some good news is that I do believe that at least one more agency has received their COC contract. So that is very good news because we were sitting at just one contract for a few months. So that's great. At the symposium last week, Dr. Richard Cho, who you know, worked at HUD for years and worked at the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. He gave us a lot of useful information about changes to HUD contracts. While there are still a lot of unknowns, it was some useful information from somebody who really is a HUD insider, is still in contact with a lot of people at HUD about just, you know, that it's going to look a little bit different this time around with these contracts. And then lastly, COC builds. So as I'm sure you recall, in the fall, HUD dropped a NOFO for COC builds, which was funding primarily for rehab, acquisition, and construction of new permanent supportive housing projects. We did submit an application as a COC last year in the fall. We received notice pretty recently from HUD saying that essentially that COC or that NOFO was null and void, and that they were going to reissue another NOFO with an extremely tight turnaround time. So I know that we have our PEC chair here who will talk more about that, but just generally, I will say this amount through this NOFO for COC builds is smaller. In the fall, it was 100 million. It's 75 million now. And a significant portion of that has been set aside for rural areas, which obviously we are not. But to end on a good note, they indicated that there will be another COC builds NOFO later this year for $100 million. So we will be looking forward to that. And of course, as soon as we get any updates, we'll share them.
Thank you, Ms. Allison.
Any questions?
Great update. Any questions, thoughts, concerns? We appreciate you. Thank you. Ms. Kelly Muldoon, Homeless Management Information System report.
I don't know what I'd do without you, Joha. Thank you so much. By the time I figure out this microphone, Hannah will be back from maternity leave. Good morning. So you all should have the document in your packets there for data for May of 2025. During May of 2025, 3,334 individuals experienced homelessness in Nashville. Of those individuals, 2,777 were in households, or those made up, 2,777 households. Of those households, 239 were families, including 435 children, and 2,538 were adult-only households. Over the past 12 months, 10,407 unique individuals have experienced homelessness in Nashville. And that is a slight decline from last month, which I like seeing that. Once again, we have not yet incorporated the missions data. We are hoping in the next month or two to be able to do that and give a more comprehensive picture. But in May, the mission served at least 2,898 individuals. That again are the individuals at the mission who have signed the consent form for their information to be uploaded into HMIS. We have had discussions with them, and I do believe that the rise in that is that they are doing a better job of getting people to agree to that data sharing. So on the second page there, you'll see that in the month of May, 277 individuals, or 8%, were veterans. That is a slight decrease from last month. 1,581, or 59%, were experiencing chronic homelessness. 244, or 7%, were youth aged 18 to 24, and 639, or 19%, were entering into HMIS this month. That is 222 new individuals and 417 returning. In May, 50% of the individuals experiencing homelessness were Black, 41% were white, 3% were Hispanic or Latino, 3% were multiracial, and 2 were a different race or ethnicity. We also saw that 59% of individuals experiencing homelessness were men, 40% were women, 1% were transgendered, and less than 1% were non-binary or other gender. Looking at individuals who were housed, we housed 158 individuals experiencing homelessness in May. Of these individuals, they were 91 households, 33 of which were families, including 58 children, and 58 were adult-only households. Over the past 12 months, we have housed 1,851 individuals. Again, it is a slight decline, so hopefully turning that around soon. Of those who moved into Nashville in the month of May, 36 or 23% were veterans, 14 or 9% were youth aged 18 to 24, and 39 or 25% were experiencing chronic homelessness. Looking at the subsidies that we use to move individuals into housing, 27 were housed with no subsidies. Followed that by 25 were housed with rapid rehousing subsidies, and 11 who were housed with Veterans Affairs or VASH vouchers. The top agencies in May for housing individuals was Operation Stand Down with 31, Salvation Army with 13, and Safe Haven Family Shelter with 10. And looking at the breakdown of individuals who were housed in May, 56% of individuals were Black, 34% were white, 3% were Hispanic or Latino, 4% were multiracial, and 3% were a different race or ethnicity. And then 51% of those individuals were men, 47% were women, 1% was transgender, and then 0%
were other genders. Questions? Yes.
Was that the report?
That's the first part,
Okay.
and then I know I have a second part to go over, but.
No problem. Thank you.
Can I
Go
ask
ahead.
a question real quick?
Mhm.
Where, can you help me navigate to where the 107 folks from the encampment are included in this data set?
So some of those individuals are included in the housing because there were individuals who were housed from that. The remainder of them are in the number experiencing homelessness.
Okay. Thank you.
I do also want to note on page 2, I think this is often confusing, and probably we would work on our wording here, where it says, entered into the HMIS system, 222 were new, 417 were returning, meaning not that they returned into homelessness, that they just reconnected with the service provider. Doesn't necessarily mean that they were housed and then returned to homelessness. I think that's really confusing for our community. So I just want to always make sure we highlight the difference there.
Are you ready for your second half?
Yes. We are very proud and very pleased and very excited and relieved to be able to also present the point in time count, finally. HUD finally opened that. We were finally able to submit that this week. And I know Megan and I are very relieved to have the hick and pit off of our plates of things to do. So you should have 2 documents there. One is the actual release, that the public information release, and the other one is a 1-page infographic. So on the night of the pit count, which of course, if we can remember that far back, was January 23rd, we encountered a total of 2,180 individuals experiencing homelessness. This is an increase over the 2,094 that we saw last year. But again, that is only a 4.1% increase. The unsheltered counts did decrease by 123 individuals this year, which is 17%, and the sheltered increased by 209 individuals, or 15%. We are attributing that to the weather. If you remember, last year was very warm. Night, we did not have the cold weather shelter open. This year was a colder night with the cold weather shelter open, which did encourage a lot more people to come in, and that is pretty proportional to what we were seeing last year. Looking at the total count, 96% of households, which is a total number of 1,886 households, or 1,936 individuals, were identified as single individuals or adult-only households. And only 4% of those households, 77 households, 241 individuals, were families with children. Of the total count, 43% identified themselves as Black or African American, 67% identified themselves as male, and 11% were veterans. Looking specifically at just the unsheltered count, 79% of the individuals surveyed reported their last permanent address was in Middle Tennessee. So we are seeing that the individuals we're encountering are from Middle Tennessee, are our neighbors. Most unsheltered people were staying in encampments at 43%, or staying on the streets and sidewalks at 22%, or 13% in vehicles. 21% of the people that we encountered reported having pets staying with them. 48% of the individuals encountered were also experiencing chronic homelessness. And 41% of the individuals reported having a serious mental illness, with 74% reporting that they have any disabling condition. Questions on the pit count?
Okay, Councilman Huffman.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for that report. Just a quick question regarding the decrease in 123. So you stated, of course, it's probably due to the weather, and there's probably some unaccounted folks around. Could you speak to OHS's strategy on how they were locating individuals? Was it just previous history of encampments, relationships with OHS coordinators? Just go into detail with that. And then I've got one other follow-up, Chair.
Sure. This year, we did have a big change with the pit, and that was that traditionally we have used the red cap system, which was afforded to us through Vanderbilt. This year, we did invest in a new pit counting app that was built specifically for the pit and allowed us to create a map. So what we did ahead of time was we went to the outreach meetings, talked with different outreach providers, and tried to create a map of hotspots of individuals have been seen here. We know encampments are in these locations, and gave a little bit more clarification on that to try and help individuals and teams that were out counting that night to find the people that we were looking for. We also, the HMIS team, the PIT team did a lot of canvassing ahead of time to try and locate individuals, worked with outreach workers to identify and to let individuals know that we were coming so they were prepared. But I think that change in the app and having those hotspots that you could really target in and find individuals helped us a lot in identifying individuals that may have been missed in years past.
Thank you. And just one quick follow-up. How many new folks did you have entered into HMIS that evening compared to people that were already in there? Do you know that?
That I don't have. I can look into it and see what kind of numbers we can get you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
One thing I also want to note is this work is not done in a silo. There's over 100 volunteers that, it says it here in the press release, but over 100 volunteers that helped on the night of the pit count, but also a host of volunteers that helped get ready and move forward. So there's a point-in-time count committee that meets, and they kind of really rev up around maybe 3 to 4 months before it's time for the point-in-time count to happen. And I do want to thank them for all of their work. I think this year that app was really more beneficial as well because it had hotspots. It, actually gave more information, longitudinal, whatever. Data that allowed outreach to be able to go to the locations where in the past we didn't have that information. So kudos to all of the community and to the HMIS team.
One other thing, just so that it is said, with the mapping, the app also allowed us for the first time, if people had their location turned on when they were submitting the app, or submitting the surveys, to kind of locate where those surveys were taking place. And then that map was taken back to the outreach teams to better identify, hey, maybe these are the places that we're missing. So we are using that data with our outreach teams across the city to target and to better serve the individuals who are literally homeless and out in encampments.
That is awesome. Councilman Huffman?
Oh, God, I broke. Oh, okay.
Oh,
I got two. Yeah, sorry. Good question, too, I promise.
it's not blinking on my side.
I'm not blinking. Maybe it's just yours.
Hey, if it makes you feel any better.
Oh, it's not.
You good? Yeah, I was gonna say it's not blinking. Right.
There we go.
Everybody feels
I
the
think
same
we're
about
working.
that.
There we go. Okay.
There
All
you
right.
go.
We're on.
Self-corrected.
I lost my question. Please. That was a moment too. What was your previous point? I'm sorry.
Well, I mentioned that we did have the ability to
Thank you.
track
Yes.
locations.
Okay. Yes. So regarding that, the survey itself, are you using location technology from that? Is that an opt-in thing? Could you just explain that a little bit?
So that was a built-in feature, and one of the reasons why we went with this PIT app is that if you turn on the location on your phone and allow the app to connect to that, which we highly encouraged and are hoping more will do each year, then when you submit the survey app automatically tracks your location at the time that you hit the submit button and gives us a map then of where are these surveys actually being conducted.
Thank you so much for that report. And if we could go to the next report, which I believe is, sorry, apologies. I'm looking down at the agenda.
Just wondering, so I think it sounds like the end user, and I was part of the pit count, but I do not remember. It sounds like we, as the owner of the phone, have to agree to have our location accessed. Is there, do the people we're surveying, do they know that their exact location is being pinpointed anywhere? Is there, I have no idea, but is that a concern? I'm asking the room because I don't know. I'm just curious, like, if that's something we should consider.
I don't know that there was anything specifically stated on the night of the pit, since each team was out there and we were trusting that they were giving the information. But we did have a policy that I can bring the next time, that we wrote ahead of time to protect and to let everyone know that that data, while it's being collected, is being collected in a secure way, is not being shared. When we did share any kind of map or anything like that, was in controlled environment only with outreach workers who have access to that information anyways. We also gave that data as, you may want to look on Murfreesboro Road around the MAPCO instead of at exact coordinates. Those exact coordinates are not shared and never will be shared.
I'm on the pit count committee, so I'll make sure we continue to have a conversation about this. And I know that there were several groups, mine included, that did not feel comfortable collecting like a pin for people's precise locations, especially in my pit count area. There's a lot of people who are, tucked away in very hidden nook and crannies because that's what they're forced to do in order to, not be bothered. So we made a conscious decision as a group to not collect pins for where people were staying.
Very valid. Drew?
Just one quick, just request. I know we highlight Black and African Americans. Can we start to also, I'm curious about how our Hispanic and Latino population progressed during this time.
That's huge.
Yeah, that's definitely information that we have and we can give you. We highlighted Black and African American just since it was our highest percentage there, but we can get you the full percentage.
Thank you so much. Any other questions or concerns? I don't want to look over anyone. Okay, and thank you so much, Ms. Kelly. And if we could go to Ms. Raquel and, Kiana as well. Okay, come on, Kiana.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. You don't get Raquel, you get me moving forward. My name is Kenna Hassler, and I am the COC voted HPC facilitator. Is that what we're calling it, right? Yeah. Liaison, sorry.
Congratulations.
I'm also the vice facilitator, so I'm Ingrid's backup. So too many titles lately. So I'm going to give a brief, because I know we don't need to go through every committee update, so I'm just going to do the highlights. So we wanted to just remind everybody that the next COC meeting is going to be Thursday, June 26th at 10:30. And the biggest thing is that the June meeting will be featuring the Homeless Planning Council election. So just a reminder to everybody that that is happening. I won't get into all the updates because they are listed in your packet. So if you are interested, please read. So we're going to go through some of the other major committee updates. So one thing is the Governance Charter Committee is currently reviewing the Homeless Planning Council downsizing recommendation from the COC. So they are currently working on that. It has to go with the Governance Charter so they can understand how we're going to do that before anything can be voted on and how to actually do it. Our next one, So we'll go obviously, for those who don't know, the Coordinated Entry and the CE Oversight Committee did release the draft of the CE Policy and Procedures for public comment. The public comment period closed at 11:59 on Monday. So that committee will now be reviewing all the public comments. I know it was a lively discussion if you didn't do your comment. Next is Standards of Care, which is my committee. So we are currently working with the Data and HMIS Oversight on defining supported services for a community, because there is a strategic plan talking about community-wide inventory of supported services, but we don't have a definition of what a supported service is as a community. So we are going to do a shared meeting in June between the Standards of Care Committee and the HMIS Oversight, or Data and Oversight Committee, so we can actually do that, and then that information can also be given to the SWAP, because I know SWAP has also talked about what is the difference between outreach and supported service, so just better having definitions. Then we have the newly formed Initiatives and Efficiency Ad Hoc Task Force. That's on your last page. The update we're giving is that the task force is researching grievance procedures from peer COCs to begin to outline proposed processes for various situations that may need to be grieved. So those were the main highlights for us, but yeah. So you will see me primarily, unless I cannot be here, doing the COC updates given the new position, but we are still ironing out how that looks. So hopefully you all enjoyed my first go.
Hey, awesome. We have one statement.
I have just one question.
Yes, ma'am.
So the Performance Evaluation Committee, I think I heard somebody refer to earlier that someone is here from that committee. Hi. So there's an update on here about the PEC continues to work on updating the reallocation policy as a strategy to address underperformance. And I don't expect that you were prepared to talk about that, but in the future, it would be really great to hear that's a lot of work. And I would love to hear how it's going and if we can support.
Thank you.
Anything else I can clarify for anyone? All righty.
No one else? Then we'll go into the action item, and Ms. Carey was already ready. You go, girl. She's going to be talking about the COC builds application, and then we'll go into any discussion, and then we'll go from there.
All right, good morning. Thank you all for being here. Allison gave a bit of an update of kind of the process of how we ended up here. You may remember seeing me here last fall asking you a very similar question on a very similar topic. And you have 3 items in your packet that are relevant to this discussion. The first is that letter of May 16th just saying the last NOFO is null and void. And then there are 2 applications that we received that are in there as well. So the PEC, this was an exciting opportunity for us. Normally COC dollars are very restricted to providing housing and supportive services for good reason. That said, I think a lot of us who work in this space know that on some days it feels like all we're doing is banging our head against the wall due to a lack of particularly permanent supportive housing units. And so the exciting thing about COC builds is that for once, COC dollars can be used for what we call sticks and bricks, doing these renovations, buying new properties, doing new construction. So this was an exciting opportunity for us. Unfortunately, we've been on a super tight time frame on this. So appreciate your attention. And this letter came out, I think, about 3 days before our PEC meeting. So we decided, we wanted to, in the last go around, we had 1 applicant that stood kind of head and shoulders above the rest of the applications that we received. And so we were hopeful that they would be willing to apply again. We also wanted to make it as transparent and competitive a process as we could. So we reopened it to the community, and we were pleasantly surprised to receive 3 applications, 2 of which were very competitive. One of them was the Park Center application. That's the one that we had approved last year and sent off to HUD before they, undid that NOFO. The other application that you have and that we found extremely competitive is this one, Mary Oaks Homes from the contributor. And we put together an emergency PEC meeting for us to get together to discuss them. We really benefited in this process from the input of our committee member, Andy Zhu, who works in the affordable housing development space. This is his bread and butter. So we really relied on Andy to kind of help talk us through the process, and he offered some really, really great insights. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to be here today. And this, I'm a lawyer, and my background is in eviction defense, fair housing enforcement, and that kind of thing. So this side of things is a little bit, I'm a little bit in over my head. And so that said, I'll do my best to help, address any questions that you'll have. So we, again, we were pleasantly surprised to have a really animated discussion about these two really strong applications. There was a lot to like in the contributor application. We really liked that they were aiming big, asking for $12 million. That's the maximum amount that you can ask for in this process. As Allison explained, unfortunately, there's less money available and we're expecting fewer awards. And we kind of gamed it out and, we think with the money that's allocated to rural communities and the, fewer than 10 awards that we're expecting to receive, we think it sounds like HUD is anticipating giving some big awards, a few big awards. So strategically, we like the idea of asking for as much money as we could. We all know we need as much money as we can get yesterday. That said, the Park Center application was also extremely competitive. They had the benefit of, having been in this process before. And they tweaked their application to update it. And the strongest thing about their application is the financial leverage and partnerships that they've already secured. And particularly that financial leverage piece is it's worth a lot of points in the way that HUD is looking at things. So Andy had a brilliant idea that, we should go big or go home. And even though we are limited as a community to submitting one application on behalf of the community, there's nothing indicating that we can't have, multiple collaborating partners involved. So essentially our decision as the PEC was that we, after that emergency meeting, decided that we wanted to go back to our two strongest applicants and ask them if they would be willing to consolidate their application, and so that we could submit that and hopefully get as much money as we can as quickly as possible, or create the best opportunity for us too. Again, we are hoping that there will be a second round later with more funds. That said, again, we all know we need as much as we can as quickly as we can. So we were excited about that, and even more excited that the applicants, got back really promptly to us within, 24 hours, I think, of us deciding that, saying that they were willing to do that. That was a big relief to us. We were really excited about that. And so they've agreed. Essentially, what we are recommending is that as a community, OHS, as the collaborative applicant, submits an application on behalf of the community where Park Center, as a result of due to their greater financial leverage and the value of that in the scoring process, will be the main applicant, and the contributor will be joining in to ask for a portion of what they were asking for in their application, so that hopefully we can get that number coming to the community up, and as much as we can without sacrificing anything on the leverage side, right? So that was our decision. We're really excited that the agencies were willing to cooperate. I don't know, I think it's gonna be really competitive, and I'm disappointed that we're having to go through this again and that there are fewer awards and less money available. I am optimistic about that second round. But given the time constraints and what we were dealing with, I'm really proud of the work that the PEC did and that the community did to come together on this. So essentially my ask for y'all today as the action item is I'm asking y'all to vote to approve the decision to submit a joint application between Park Center, Urban Housing Solutions, and the contributor for the COC Builds grant. And I know Park Center and Urban Housing Solutions and the contributor have been working with OHS and together to finalize a joint application that we think will be good to submit on behalf of the community. So I am happy to address any questions on that to the best of my ability.
Thank you for the recommendation and the work that went with this. Could you what is the total amount of the application ask? Is it the 5 million for Park Center? That was unclear.
Yes, so I am not sure whether there has been an update on that exact amount. It will be the maximum amount. Okay, so yes, so the 12 million. So we'll be putting in for the full 12 million, the maximum amount that we can get.
Peggy, I know I missed our emergency meeting, so I'm very excited about this. I'm excited that we have agencies that are collaborating on this. Does that change the amount? Because there was a pretty big unit production between Park Center and the contributors application. Applying jointly for the 12, are we clear on how many units we're aiming to produce with that?
Please.
So sorry, so the turnaround on this grant was extremely tight. We have maybe 2 weeks before it can be submitted. And the PEC just met last week. And the decision to join the projects was just last week. So to be totally honest, OHS, Park Center, and the contributor are gonna have to sit down and hammer out a lot of the specific details about how many units they'll be asking for. As she said, we think that it really seems that HUD plans to make some big awards, so we want to ask for a lot of money. But a lot of those details just have not been hammered out yet because the turnaround on this was just so short. Certainly, we will share them as soon as we have them, but we're going to have to put our heads down for the next couple weeks and.
Got it. Would it be safe to anticipate that it's going to be more, was Park Center's 55 was the original, I think, for the 5 million?
Yes.
Would it be safe to anticipate that by combining, we're hoping to produce more than 55?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Oh, Jamie?
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we approve the recommendation of the Performance Evaluation Committee in a combined COC builds application with Park Center, Urban Housing, and the contributor.
Second. Okay, thank you. And we'll move to a vote to approve. That would be Park Center, COC builds, and the contributor in a joint application. And all in favor, if you could raise your hands to be counted. Okay, and any noes? And any abstentions? I'm an abstention. I didn't realize it. Recusing. I'm being told.
One recusal.
Recused.
One abstention.
Okay, yeah. I'm on the board.
She's recusing because of board.
I named it earlier. Yep, thank y'all. 2 recusals. And everybody else voted yes, so that motion carries and is approved for Park Center and the contributor to collaborate on the COC builds award. I'm looking for the right words, y'all. But thank y'all for that, and
can I just do a point of clarification, because there's loud talk, that Urban Housing is partnering with Park Center in this application, so that is, could you, Carrie, clarify that, please?
Yes, so to be clear, as with the initial application that we had approved last year, the Park Center application relies on a partnership with Urban Housing Solutions. So that was already a joint application, and we're making it more joint.
Okay. Thank you for that. we'll move forward.
If I could,
oh.
5 seconds, to address the questions about reallocation, I think she just left.
Okay.
But I will say, we are working hard on that. That was actually the top agenda item before this issue came up. We diverted a little bit for those purposes. But the reallocation policy is still something that we're working on very hard. And that's the main topic at our next meeting. And we are optimistic that, with any luck, you'll see me again next month, hopefully with an updated reallocation policy to ask y'all to approve. So I just wanted to provide that update. Appreciate the support, and we'll let you know if there's any other support that we need on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and so it is already 10 o'clock. I'm going to make an executive decision to table the rest of the items, if everybody's okay with that, just to keep from keeping us any longer. And we could put them on the next agenda for July. And I know we had story of progress. Thank you, Ja. So they had an inspection this morning for the hotels they have. I know she has at least 244 rooms ready that have been through the fire marshal and everything. And they're taking VASH vouchers, Section 8 vouchers, anything to get people inside. And this particular one that's ready, I know is in the Opryland area. It's very nice, has a pool inside and everything. So she has some meetings to get inspected. And also she takes choices too through healthcare. So that's huge for that to be an option.
Do you know how much they are if someone doesn't have a subsidy?
They are $1,400 per unit, and those are with the dorm room refrigerator. I don't believe it has a stove, but she will be providing meals, and also they get a ton of supplies for people, including pet supplies as well. So that's kind of a synopsis on the story of progress. I'm their homeless director as well, so that's why I'm able to have that information. But yeah, they're not here today to be with us. Maybe they'll be able to come and present the next time. So, but otherwise, we are adjourned. If there are no other concerns or thoughts, we can. Okay, Pastor Handy.
Not necessarily a thought. I just want to acknowledge the diversity of thought in this room and how appreciative it is, while also suggesting that sometimes we get consumed by data and driven by data points, whereas an alternative could be that we're driven by compassion.
Amen.
So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
That's a good note to end on there. So y'all have a phenomenal rest of the week and month, and thank you all.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.